Welcome, welcome. Today, we're going to talk about, are you too old to learn English? So, I want to start by asking you, how old are you? And how many times have you heard children can learn a language much more quickly, much more easily than an adult? This is a long time saying that we're going to talk a little bit about today. But first, if I haven't met you, my name is Tanya. I am the creator of the She Speaks Fluency program for women here at English Coach 3Ts. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. So, this is a thing I hear a lot. Children learn more easily than adults. And I hear this especially when it comes to learning a language. This is very, very interesting to me. This is a very narrow way of looking at something. Because if we were to say this about other things, you wouldn't necessarily think this is true. If I said to you, children can learn how to cook easier than adults, or children can learn about history easier than adults, you wouldn't think that. So I have 4 things I want to talk to you about today about this. And if you have ever felt like I am too old to learn English, I really want to talk to you and I want to answer your questions. And if you don't feel that way, if you feel like I know I can learn English no matter how old I am, I want to talk to you and I'd like to ask you to share the things we talk about today with the people you know who think that they are too old to learn English. No matter where they live, no matter if they're a man or a woman, no matter if they are working as an engineer or an architect or a waitress or a trash picker-upper. That's not really a word, trash picker-upper. We say things like that sometimes in English. If they are someone who works in any line of work or they don't work now, or no matter what, I want you to share this with them because it is so, so important. First, I want to say we really need to think about what it means to teach and to learn. If you're here today, if you were ever in a class with me, I know that you have been my teacher. My students in my class teach me things all the time. Sometimes they're teaching me something about their country, or sometimes they're teaching me something that they know about that I don't know about. But a lot of the time, they're teaching me just by sharing themselves. And this is huge. I think we need to stop and think about this for a little while because sadly, over time, we have developed a belief in the entire world that there are some people who know and some people who don't know, and these people are better or higher or more valuable. And this is not true. There are people all over the world who know different things. And I saw a quote from Albert Einstein this morning that I don't remember, but it's reminding me of one of my favorite quotes for him that I can't quote word for word, but he says something like, if you tell a fish, if you tell a fish that or judge a fish on its ability to learn by whether or not it can climb a tree, the fish will always think it's stupid. Fish don't climb trees. But if you think about this, fish are very good at swimming. And if you judge something that can't swim against the fish, this is a problem. I'll look up this quote. I'll put it on my Instagram today so that you can see it there. And I'll put it in the description. I'll put it in the description is what I'll do. Hi, Lourdes. Welcome. It's so good to see people here. Lucy, it's great to see you from Croatia. Suna, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. It's so good to see different people here. Venezuela, Argentina, Turkey, Croatia, people, Colombia, people from around the world. It's great to see you here, my teachers. So, and yes, even if I have not met you in person, you are teaching me a lot. I learned so much from this YouTube, which would not be possible if you were not here. So let's start talking about the 4 things I want you to think about today when we think about, are you too old to learn English? So it's so important to think about the way children learn and the way we learn as adults. Children are different the way they learn throughout their life, just because that's the way we grow. You were once a child. And when I'm talking about children, this is a broad category. A 5-year-old child is different than an 18-year-old child, let's say 17-year-old. In the United States, when you turn 18, you're magically an adult. Of course, this is not true. Of course, you are a young adult who still needs a lot of guidance and help. I'm 58. I've been an adult for 40 years. Oh my gosh, how is that possible? And I still need guidance and help differently than I did when I was 18. So this is one of the things I want you to think about. Often when people say children learn a language more easily, they're talking about the way you learned your native language. And also they're talking about very young children, even children through their teens. And what they're talking about specifically is how flexible children are, very flexible. And as they grow, we become less flexible in body, mind, and spirit. This is a part of the human experience, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. And so when children are very small and they're learning a language, especially if it's a second language, they and their first language, they don't even have a problem making mistakes. As adults, we're like, a mistake, I can't make a mistake. One of the biggest things about learning a language that we need to learn, and you've heard me say this a lot, is how to make a mistake and be okay with it. If you don't make mistakes, you're not learning. Because if you already know exactly how to say it, you're not learning. You already know it. When you begin to learn something, you make mistakes. It's part of the process. And so this, I can't make a mistake thing that's usually inside of us stops us from learning, whereas children don't have that. So they are learning very quickly. We can learn that from children. We can learn from them to be a little more flexible. Adults, on the other hand, we have different ways of learning. And one of the things we do is we will look at our native language and the new language and make comparisons. And there are many things that we can learn from that if we can use that flexibility and be like, oh, wow, isn't that amazing? Isn't that interesting? And be curious about the language. So there are different ways of learning for children and adults. This is one of the biggest things. It's not that children learn more easily, it's that they learn differently. And we can learn a lot from each other. So if you ever have the chance to spend time with a child learning another language, no matter what age this child is, I recommend you do it and be very curious. And a huge important thing on this point is that everyone, no matter how old they are, have an innate in us, a natural ability to learn. But it's different for different people, for different ages, for different experiences, all kinds of things. And this is quite frankly, one of the reasons that I have She Speaks, a lot of times people ask me, why is your She Speaks program, your fluency program for women? There are many, many reasons why that is. But one of the reasons is that both men and women can learn. There's no like men are better at learning, women are better at learning. This is a myth. That doesn't exist. However, different people learn differently, and women and men have different ways of communicating. And I think if you think about this, even in your native language, men and women communicate differently. And learning a language is about communicating. And so this is one of the reasons that I have that. And if you are a man listening today, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. It is my goal, as many of you know, to at some time have a We Speak program for men and women. I'm not a man, so I probably won't be teaching He Speaks, but I would love to have somebody on my team do that someday. I don't have that person on my team right now, but welcome for being here now. Okay, so the number one was children and adults learn differently. One's not better or worse than the other. They learn differently, and they can learn from each other, and they all have an innate ability to learn, a way inside of them to learn. We are always learning until the day we die. I think we all know this, but we have to remind ourselves of this. Okay, my second point. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about if children were the only ones who could learn a second language, I would not be able to learn Spanish. I remember when I was a child, a young adult and a child, in my early teenage years, I started learning French. And I was so glad because, children learn languages easier. No, that's not true. In my teenage years, for 4 years, I took French classes. And then in college, or university as it's called in many parts of the world, in American English, we say college. After you graduate from high school, you go to college at the university. And I took 2 years of French. And so 6 years of French. Actually, it was a little more than that. And at that point, I decided, this is not working. I cannot speak French. I'm going to stop doing this thing that's not working. I think it was Albert Einstein, but I'm not sure, said something like doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, expecting it to work differently is insanity. And I kept going to those classes and I could not speak French. And I was a child for 4 of those years. It isn't that children can learn better or more easily or faster, or I would not have learned my second language, that is Spanish. And I tried a lot of times in my young life in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, and there just simply there weren't resources that we have today. So I want to talk more about that. But if you haven't told me yet how old you are and you feel comfortable telling me how old you are, let me know in the comments, wherever you can write. Let me know how old you are, because I want you to understand that you can learn English. Rita says, in my opinion, we can learn at any age. Yes, Rita, despite other people telling us that, or despite what society tells us. It's more difficult to study when you're an adult. Now, I don't totally agree with that. It's different. An adult has more fears and insecurities. I 100% agree with that. It is more difficult for adults to overcome their fears and insecurities because we think we shouldn't have them. Children know that they have fears and insecurities, and it feels totally natural to them to have them. And it feels totally natural to them to ask someone for help. And for us, it doesn't feel like a good thing. Many of us learn from our culture, it's bad to ask for help. You should not be afraid. You should be strong all the time. You should never have fear. And this just simply isn't true or even possible. If you meet someone who says they don't have fear, I would walk a long distance around them because they are not being honest with themselves. They have turned this into something else, which is a whole nother topic. It is, for me, one of the things, if we ever can have a teacher who can teach He Speaks program, this is such an important part of that program because sadly, men, at least in my culture, and I know in many cultures, are taught that they can't have fear or sadness. And women too, in a different way. Whether you're a man or a woman, no matter how old you are, it's okay to have fear and sadness. The important thing is what you do with that, how you react or respond to that. You've heard me talk a little bit about the difference between reacting and responding. And responding is when you stop and think and then take action. Okay, I'm seeing we have some different ages here: 56, 57, 23, 67, 33, 41. We have lots of ages here. And I will tell you, in the She Speaks program, we have women in their 30s all the way into their 60s. And to get back to my point number 2, I am 58 years old. I am so grateful to be 58 years old. I love being 58 years old. There's so many wonderful things about being 58 years old. And I still have a half a year, more or less, to be 58 years old. And I can't wait to see what I get to experience in this part of my life. And I can tell you, to, to go on with that story about how I've been learning Spanish, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, it was extremely difficult for me to learn Spanish. I could not afford classes. I didn't have enough money to pay for a class. There was no internet. There was some internet, but there wasn't YouTube. There weren't the resources we have now. I should just hold up all of my fingers. There just wasn't all of the opportunity that we have now. I could not have come to a class like this where you are now, where you can ask me any question. Oh, Shabam says, can I call you Mima? Yes, please call me Mima. But when I turned 50 years old, it was one of my life dreams to learn a second language. This is going to choke me up a little. Let me put this: to be choked up is when you can feel yourself starting to cry. And so I decided I wanted to learn Spanish, and I saw that my kids, we had YouTube for a while, but I just didn't get it. I came from a time when we didn't have it, but my kids were learning all kinds of things, like how to fix the toilet and how to fix their car and what to say and all these things. And so I thought, my children and everybody in my family was watching a screen all the time. And I've never been a screen person. Can you believe that? I'm currently on a screen and I was never a screen person. I am a screen person now, sometimes too much, but I try to stay in balance. That's another topic. So I started watching videos and learning Spanish. And that's a whole nother story why I chose Spanish. But now I'm also learning German. And I can tell you, in these 8 years of learning Spanish, I can hold a meaningful conversation, meaning I can have a conversation with another Spanish speaking person, heart to heart, and they can understand me. I can understand them. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Oh my gosh, so many mistakes, because I'm teaching myself. Even though I know how important it is to make mistakes, it's hard for me to make mistakes. So this is my point number 2. There are a lot of people who did not learn a language in their childhood. It was so hard for them to learn a language in their childhood, and now they're learning a language. I have women in my She Speaks program who, like I said, in their 30s all the way into their 60s. I've seen women at 62. I've seen women at 65. I've seen women in their 70s start speaking more than they ever have in English. Stop. Please stop thinking you can't learn a language because of your age. It's just not true. Okay, let's go to number 3 about learning a language and age. One of the main reasons I started learning Spanish, except for that it was my life dream, but one of the big reasons was it's so good for your brain. Now, go and look at all the research. Go and read some things about this in English. This is going to help you to be more fluent. This is my learning tip for you today. Go and find out about how whether or not learning a language is good for your brain. Read lots of things. Read the things that say, there's maybe it is, maybe it isn't. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Read a lot of different things. And if you find things that are too difficult for you to read, ask ChatGPT or another AI to make it easier. Say, I can't understand this article. Will you write it at a B1 level or a B2 level? And ChatGPT will do that for you. When I was 20, this could not happen. Heck, when I was 55, this could not happen. This is so exciting, something that you can do right now to learn English that you could not have done before. And no matter how old you are today, you can use this resource. So I know that it's been good for my brain, and I'll tell you why, because it's been good for my mental health. And my mental health is connected to my brain and all of me, right? When I was 50, I was in a very difficult situation and I could not do anything but think about that situation. Oh, all the time. It was causing my whole life to be difficult. This one thing. And I decided now is the time to start learning Spanish so I can focus on Spanish instead of this other thing. And it absolutely helped my whole life. And I started to be able to speak in Spanish. I couldn't believe it. Many people in the United States never learn a second language. Do we have to take 4 years or whatever it is in high school now? Yes. Most universities require at least 2 years. Do we ever learn to speak a language? No. Why? Because of that way of teaching that doesn't work. That's another video. And I have made lots of videos on that. So please go watch some of the other videos. Okay, number 4. So number 3, in case I didn't make that clear, is that it's really good for our brain, no matter how old we are, to learn another language. And think about the different reasons you're learning a language, because I bet there's not just one. Hopefully you have one powerful reason. But think of all of the different reasons you're learning, because these are also important. All right, number 4. This part of number 4 is I've been sort of talking about this all along, and I talked about it a lot in a recent video. And when you're learning anything, you need to know how to learn it. But here's the trick. If this teacher says, here's this one way to learn, again, I might go a little, not as far away from somebody who says they have no fear, but with a person who says there's only one way to learn, I want to know what you think that one way is. And then I want to go and look at other ways. There are so many ways to learn. And this is one of the things that makes it more difficult. And all of the resources we have are so wonderful, like I've been talking about, but it also makes it more difficult. Do I do this? Wait, do I do that? Do I do this? Do I do that? When we were in a classroom, we knew what to do because there was one teacher and they said, do this. It worked for some people, but it didn't work for most people. Now, one of the huge resources we have that's so important is there are so many resources, but you have to find what works for you. What works for you? We know there are some things you need to learn a language. You need to listen to things you understand. You need to speak and practice speaking. You need to make mistakes. You need to practice reading. You need to practice writing. But there are so many ways to read, so many ways to write, so many resources. So the most important thing is you need to find what works for you. So let's see if there are any questions and if I can answer those. Louise says, Tanya, what do you recommend for us to learn real English? So there are many types of real English. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Louise, but I think you mean everyday English, the casual English, the English we use all the time. What I recommend, Louise, is to listen to things like this, especially if you can understand, to find other things where you can listen and understand and listen to a lot of different types of English. Think about that child who we think learns better than us. Hopefully, you don't believe that anymore. Hopefully, now you know, oh, the child learns differently, and I can get some ideas from the child. The child is learning all kinds of things they're interested in. A child learns best, all people learn best when they're interested in whatever it is. So, Louise, please listen to things that are interesting to you, all kinds of different interesting things. Please listen to things you understand and please practice talking about those things. And big, big, big thing, Louise, use the English you already have. Okay, Deepak says, I'm 30 and I'm able to learn Am I able to learn English? Absolutely, absolutely. Please reply about your concern because hassle life, no time after completing 30 with family and job. This is one of the big differences between children and adults. Children, depending on where they live, because a lot of American children have no time. Parents keep them very, very busy. Generally speaking, though, children have more time than adults. This is something I talk a lot about, Deepak. And so a lot of it is working the English into your life. And if you have a family, speak to them in English, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day. If you have a job, speak to them in English. If you drive to work, listen to English. I know that it is tricky, but there's many things you can do. Mr. Bob Newell, hello. It's good to see you. Mr. Bob Newell is a regular here. Do you think the English language will become the dominant world language? I think it is now the dominant world language. I think it will probably continue, but it's hard to say with technology and everything. It's hard to say. Ursula, welcome. And I see people here of different ages. It's so awesome to see everyone. Oh, Louise says, sometimes it's difficult to learn the pronunciation of a dictionary. If you haven't been with me long, you maybe haven't heard me say, use youglish.com. They are not paying me. I don't think they pay anyone. It is one of the best resources for English learners. And I put it in the chat here. I'll put it below. What did I say I would put below? Besides, does anybody remember what I said at the beginning? That what I said I would put in the description? Oh, the quote from Einstein and Youglish. Youglish is free, and I tell all my students, I show them how to use it in many different ways. Use your imagination and be curious. All right. If I didn't get to your question or you have another thought or idea that you want to talk to me about, go to the recording of this video, which I will be posting very soon. And if you, I was going to say if, I'm pretty sure you want to be fluent in English. I'm pretty sure you want to find out how you can make your English learning life more effective, how you can make it work better. And so what I want you to do next is go watch my video about how to make a plan and how to find the plan that is the right plan for you. I will link that below and I'll put it over here when YouTube lets me do that. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.